Hello number ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. Now today I have a rather interesting topic for you. It's linguistic and it has to do with ancient ideograms, so we're talking about Chinese characters, and Egyptian hieroglyphs. So we will compare these two. Let's get to it. Now by now I think that most of you know that as an Orientalist, most of my studies, or at least the majority of my studies, have to do with ancient Japanese and cultures and Chinese as well. As a matter of fact, I have a major in Japanese and my minor was Mandarin Chinese, but I also loved, when I was a university student, studying ancient cultures, both in the West and in the East. Now what happened exactly, just to let you know a little story about me, is that when I was a university student, a second year course, I did a exam session, and it was in June, and I took all the exams that I needed to take for that year. So I actually took 7 exams in one session. And so I found myself with a lot of free time and spare time. So not knowing what to do, considering that I was spending literally all my time at the university's library, I decided to start attending other courses that were not part of my curriculum. So I started attending ancient Egyptian writing courses and Egyptian archaeology classes, and that was incredibly interesting. But what really started stimulating my interest was the idea of comparing ancient Chinese characters, the Hanzi, or in Chinese, or kanji in Japanese, to the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and this is what we're going to talk about here. As a matter of fact, there are two different kinds of Orientalism, or two different kinds of Orientalists. You have pure Orientalists, which are the kind of Orientalists who simply focus on Asian cultures and languages, and then you have the comparative Orientalists who focus on comparing Western cultures and Eastern cultures, and I am part of the latter. I'm a comparatist by nature. So from an academic point of view, having a look at a ideographical system born in the West, meaning in Egypt, and then comparing it with the Chinese characters was incredibly interesting, and I think it was very profound as far as understanding ancient writing systems is concerned. So let's talk about these similarities and differences that I have noticed in these two very mysterious writing systems. Ancient Egyptian writing started, or at least is dated, 3,400 years ago, for what we know, and the hieroglyphs were mostly used for writing on temple walls and tombs. As far as the Chinese characters are concerned instead, well, as far as we know, the earliest confirmed and certified writing discovery belongs to the Xiang dynasty, which in Chinese would be pronounced Shangchao, and they are oracle bone script. Now these kind of inscriptions were carved into bone or turtle shells, which were then sold as dragon bone for medical purposes. Now, having said all this, there is one fundamental factor that is poignant and plays a pivotal role in understanding ancient writing, whether it be Egyptian, Chinese or Japanese. What you need to understand is the culture. So if you wish to really thoroughly comprehend what these natives and these ancient populations wanted to say, wanted to express, you need to understand the way they think, you need to understand their mentality. So rather than simply memorizing symbols and their meaning in your language, you need to understand the full, real meaning, original meaning for the natives who wrote those characters thousands of years ago. Because you have to consider that particularly with Chinese characters, clearly Egyptian is not used anymore, unfortunately, I might add. As a matter of fact, the latest dated inscription in hieroglyphs was made on the gate post of a temple at Philae in 396 AD. Chinese characters constitute the oldest continuously used system of writing in the world. So the core of the matter is, if you really want to understand what that character means, you need to know how the person who invented that character thought. And considering we're talking about thousands of years ago, then you might want to start reading books, ancient literature, history books, archaeological books, particularly if you're into ancient reading and deciphering of characters. To give you an example, this character here in Japanese is read yasumu, and although it's a character that again originates in Chinese, as I said. Now this character means to rest. But if we examine the two different symbols and parts, particularly radicals that constitute the character, we will see that the one on the left means person and the one on the right means tree. So why does a person tree mean rest? Well, what you need to understand is that in ancient China, when they invented this character, the vast majority of the population was peasant. Okay, they were peasants. For the concept of resting was to stop working on the rice fields, just put your back against a tree and start resting a little bit before going back to work. Now, this is a very classic and simple example to understand why they chose specific radicals with specific semantic fields to create this very abstract concept of resting. You will notice that I have some papers on the wall. Now these are ancient writings, so let's just see what they are. Now this is Egyptian ancient hieroglyphs, and at the bottom here this is Chinese, and it's an ancient poem written by Li Bai, and it's actually one of my favorite poems. It's called 静夜思 床前明月光 疑是地上霜 举头望明月 低头思故乡. Now, clearly, if we examine these characters, and some of these are more difficult than others, but for example, a character like this one here, which is the character for the moon, it's quite simple to remember. So it's pronounced yue in Chinese, it's pronounced tsuki in Japanese. It symbolizes, it resembles the object that we are trying to describe, meaning the moon. And if you see, it has two small lines in the middle, those are the clouds. Now, this is what you call a pictogram or a pictograph. It conveys its meaning through its pictorial resemblance to a physical object. To be specific, pictograms make up only a small part of Chinese characters. Some examples here, we have mu in Chinese or ki in Japanese, wood. We have zhi in Chinese or hi in Japanese, the sun. But this is not the entirety of the problem. We are talking about approximately 4% of characters fall within the category of pictograms. So to have a broader understanding of what a Chinese character is, we're talking about logograms. Egyptian hieroglyphs are also logograms, or at least have their origin as logograms. What a logogram is a writing system in which each symbol represents a concept rather than a sound. Now in this video we'll try not to get too technical, but when you talk about logogram you have semantic and phonetic dimensions. In the case of Chinese characters we divide Hanzi or Chinese characters into 6 types by etymology. So we have first type, pictograms, pictorial representation of the morpheme represented. For example, shan in Chinese or yama in Japanese, meaning mountain. You can actually see the resemblance to a mountain. The second type is the actual ideograms. These attempt to visualize abstract concepts, such as up and down. Then we have radical compounds. In these characters, each element of the character called a radical, so again, an element of the character is called a radical, hints at the meaning. Like we said in the character for rest, we have person and tree. These two radicals or elements hint to the meaning. But to gain this hint, to understand it, you need to know the culture. Number 4, radical phonetic compounds. So one component is the radical indicates the general meaning, so it gives you the semantic field. And the other one, the phonetic radical, hints at the pronunciation. Now, these characters here constitute around 90% of Chinese logograms. Type 5, changed annotation characters. These are characters which have bifurcated through semantic drift, meaning that this character here can mean both music, pronounced yue, and pleasure, pronounced le in Chinese. So double possibility in one character. The last one, improvised characters or improvised borrowed words. They come into use when a native spoken word has no corresponding character, and therefore another character with the same or similar sound is borrowed. For example, this character here used to have the pictographic meaning of nose, but then it was borrowed to mean self, and now this is how it's mostly used today. So again, if you read archaic compounds and compositions, then it will still maintain the old meaning of nose, but in modern reading, it will have only the meaning of self. So again, you need to understand the culture, and it's very different reading modern things and reading ancient script. To better grasp the concept of compound ideograms, one thing that I often tell my students is to translate them as logical aggregates or associative compounds. So you combine two or more pictographic or ideographic characters to suggest a third meaning. Let's have another one, the meaning of good, which is composed of a woman and a child. I would say that around 13% of characters fall into this category. But just to remind you now, the majority of the characters are compounds, and to give you the full name, phono-semantic compounds, which in Chinese you say 形声字. So the character composed by two parts, the semantic indicator, which suggests the general meaning of the compound character, and the phonetic indicator, whose pronunciation suggests the actual pronunciation of the character. Hieroglyphs also are full of mystery. I mean, people had been trying to decipher Egyptian scripts since the 5th century AD. It was the discovery in 1799 of the Rosetta Stone, which was a bilingual text in Greek and Egyptian hieroglyphs and demotic scripts, which enabled scholars to finally decipher scripts by the 1820s. So it still took them 20 years. Now, some scholars say that hieroglyphic writing possibly predates Sumerian cuneiform writing. Now, we can't be 100% sure of this, but if it's true, then ancient script is the oldest known writing system. Some scholars say that perhaps these two scripts developed together at the same time. We don't have enough data to have a definitive answer yet. Hieroglyphic writing can be written in horizontal line, running either from left to right or from right to left, or in vertical columns, running from top to bottom. This is similar to Chinese and Japanese, so traditionally speaking, Oriental characters also are written top to bottom and they go right to left. In modern times though, if you can also write them horizontally, but if you do that, then it would be from left to right, always. In Egyptian, you can really vary the direction of your characters however you want. Luckily, with Egyptian, you can tell the direction of any piece of writing by looking at the way the animals and people are facing. They look towards the beginning of the line. So if they look right, you start reading from right to left. So the arrangement of glyphs was based partly on artistic considerations in Egyptian. Now, for the number of glyphs in Egyptian, anciently, when we talk about classical or Middle Egyptian, so 2000 to 1650 BC, then the number of glyphs will be around 700, but during Greco-Roman eras, so we're talking about 332 BC to 400 AD, over 5,000 glyphs were in use. Now, for the Chinese characters, we are talking about the tens of thousands. Now, going back to hieroglyphs, the glyphs have both semantic and phonetic values. So this is very similar to Chinese as we have seen before. So for example, let's have a look. If you see the picture of a crocodile, this means both the crocodile, but it also represents the sound msh. So when writing the word for a crocodile, the ancient Egyptian put together both the symbol, which was basically the painting of a crocodile, together with those characters which would spell the pronunciation of msh, in this case these three. Now, hieroglyphs are not the only writing system used by the Egyptians. They are related to other two called hieratic and demotic, but I don't really have time to discuss these here. I will have a full dedicated video to that if you're interested. Clearly there is a lot more to say if we wanted to go in deep into the language, but I wanted to give you, for now, this concept of these similarities between the two, and also basic layer of understanding which tells you a little bit more than what you usually hear in videos, where people just tell you the characters represent the images and the ideas. But I think that if you have managed to reach this far to this video, now you have a better understanding of what's going on. I will return to this concept in the future. Alright then, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching as always, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. A lot of cultural and historical videos coming up soon, so stay tuned to the Metatron's channel. Goodbye.